Certainly. Good morning, everyone. Great to be at the National Battery Testing Centre at Banyo in Brisbane. Today I'm joined by Mick Brenni, the Minister for Energy, Professor Margaret Shields, who's the President and Vice-Chancellor of Queensland University of Technology, and Joshua Watts, the Project Lead at the National Battery Testing Centre. Last week I was at Wivenhoe Dam with Mick Brenni, talking about the need for more storage for energy in Queensland. And when we were out at Wivenhoe Dam, we saw what happens with pumped hydro. And what is happening here at the National Battery Testing Centre is as important for storage as that pumped hydro scheme we saw last week. Large-scale battery storage, as we talked about last week, large-scale storage of energy is the key to unlocking our renewable energy future. And large-scale battery storage will play a significant role in the storage of renewable energy in the future, particularly as we pick up and expand renewable energy generation in Queensland. There will be a day when we will have excess renewable energy in Queensland, and we need to find a way to store that. And one of the key measures to do that, one of the key mechanisms to do that, will be enhanced battery storage. We don't also just want to store energy in Queensland, we want to make the batteries that can store that energy. This is a story not just about renewable energy, it's also a story about manufacturing, supporting more jobs in more industries in Queensland, particularly advanced manufacturing. We know we can do that in Queensland, and we want to make sure we can be part of the manufacturing story for renewable energy in Queensland. There are two principal battery technologies, lithium-ion and redox flow batteries, and both of those types of batteries can be tested here at the National Battery Testing Centre. From batteries for cars and appliances to scaled-down versions of industrial-sized batteries that can store large amounts of energy generated, say, through solar energy. The key to developing this future is collaboration. Government, business, industry and universities working together to develop, to enhance and improve the technology we need for battery storage. We want to kick that along. We want to accelerate that work. And that's why I'm so pleased to announce today that in our budget next week we'll be allocating $15 million to expand and enhance the work of the National Battery Testing Centre here at Banyo. That investment by our government is expected to leverage another $35 million in investment from business and universities. We want to see $50 million coming into this facility over the next 5 years. So that's why we're taking that first step to support a nation-leading battery testing facility and to leverage that additional investment from universities and from the private sector. We want to give this centre the ability to certify battery cells and systems, which is something that at the moment can only be done overseas. We want to make sure that happens in Queensland. That will save time and money for companies in particular who want to be part of the renewable energy and the renewable energy battery future for Queensland. It means testing more batteries for more uses, from microgrids to electric vehicles, to applications in defence and resource industries. So Queensland can be the national home and the natural home for battery testing and production in this country. That will be great for our renewable energy future, not just for Queensland but for Australia, but very importantly it'll be important for the growth of jobs and future jobs in our state. I might ask Mick Brenni to say a few words, Professor Shields and Joshua Watts, and then happy to take some questions on that and any other matters.
Well, it's terrific to be here today with the Treasurer of Queensland and Professor Shields and her team. The pressure that we've all seen on the national electricity market over the last couple of weeks, I think underscores just how important it is for us to store more Queensland renewable energy in batteries that will be developed and tested at the National Battery Testing Centre here at Banyo. Queenslanders, whether they're households, businesses, our electricity companies, are already actively considering how batteries will play a role in their home, in their workplace or in their system. We see Queenslanders actively looking at electric vehicles and battery storage in their home too. And they're doing it because Queenslanders know that it makes sense to store this plentiful resources that we have in terms of our renewable energy and put it back into the grid at those peak times where we see high electricity prices. And they know that it makes sense because storage is the key to our energy independence, be it in the home, statewide or as a nation. This National Battery Testing Centre, with the funding support delivered through next week's budget, will make sure Queensland consumers get the right sorts of batteries for Queensland climatic conditions. And that's incredibly important to make sure that as we continue to see growth in the use of batteries, that we have batteries that are durable and effective. It's an important consumer protection as well. Now, we've already declared our intention in Queensland to become the world's renewable energy superpower. So this investment will ensure the entire supply chain can operate here from Queensland, from research and development to testing to manufacturing and deployment. And that's terrific news because that equals more jobs in more industries.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here with the Treasurer and the Minister and very wonderful to receive this investment into the National Battery Testing Centre here at Banyo and for my colleagues here at QUT. This is, as you've heard from the Treasurer and the Minister, this is really critical in part of our renewable future, and it's a part of our QUT's strategy and approach to engaging with the challenges of the future, particularly in renewables, but more broadly, is that we take our research much closer to industry and work with industry and government to deliver solutions. It's another example also of the capacity of this kind of activity to attract the best talent from around the world. So we're very fortunate. Josh has worked here with some of the leading scientists in battery technology, and we've also been able to attract Maggie Golblinski, who's worked in the leading battery companies around the world, to this facility, combining their expertise with that of their colleagues to be able to propose the kind of work that we need to do to make the batteries for Queensland's future. So it's wonderful and a very exciting day, Treasurer and Minister, and part of a number of investments that we've collaborated on in creating this kind of activity and these sort of facilities for the future. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. It's an incredible opportunity to work with Queensland State Government on developing the large-scale battery testing facilities here. We've been operating here for 6 years or so across the entire battery value chain, from materials research, development, testing, all the way up to large-scale storage and testing for deployment and creating solutions for Queensland and Australia. So this investment will really allow us to focus on gearing up to test a diverse range of large-scale energy storage solutions for deployment here. And we've got a great amount of industry partners who are working on developing these technologies, getting them into Australia, and we're really looking forward to working with them to deploy these and actually get out there and solve the energy issues that we're currently facing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Have you taken questions? Any questions on that? Yeah, sure.
Nothing on the battery centre to start? Okay. Thank you.
Some energy analysts say that gas companies...
Okay, before we go on, that's fine. There's no more questions on the centre, so you don't need to be...
Okay, great.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Cheers.
Well
Much
done.
appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
compensation. Are you concerned about that?
Oh, look, I think all Australians are concerned about energy prices and we're actively monitoring the situation. We know that the Australian Energy Market Operator is administering the system, so they've put a price cap on at $300, and there is compensation, as you said, going to those generators who can demonstrate that their price of generation exceeds that. But ministers met for the first time under the leadership of New Climate and Energy Minister Chris Bowen, and that meeting heralded a new era of cooperation and collaboration. We're really in this position in Australia and on the East Coast because of 9 years of energy policy failure by the coalition government. That's left us exposed as a nation to those global price impacts, particularly on gas because of the conflict on Ukraine. But one of the key decisions of that first Energy Ministers meeting was to ask the Australian Energy Regulator to look at all of those market dynamics and look at the bidding behaviour of generators and provide advice to government around what should be done to consider whether there are measures that can be taken to ensure that we're getting the right electricity generated at the right price.
Whose job is it to investigate if generators are gaming the system?
That's the Australian Energy Regulator.
Have you been in touch with them about what's happening right now in Queensland?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spoken to the Australian Energy Regulator just yesterday. I've spoken to the Australian Energy Market Operator today. And today I've also spoken to every single one of Queensland's publicly owned electricity companies. So there are 3 generating companies and our transmission and distribution company. What I want to assure and provide reassurance to Queenslanders is that there is no risk of widespread outages of power. What we have seen is the market operator ask for more supply to come into the system. This is a normal occurrence, and to construe that as there being a significant risk or an elevated risk of blackouts is just not how the market works. There is a price cap, that is true and that is appropriate, but the energy market operator can confirm, and I can confirm that just a few moments ago we had about double the amount of electricity available compared to what we need. But the market operator is still issuing those notices. So no blackouts, keeping a lid on prices and working with states and territories and the new Australian government for a longer term solution. And batteries, of course, are a big part of that.
So after speaking to the regulator, is there proof that there are operators out there gaming the system?
The regulator is going to provide advice to ministers in due course.
They haven't told you if they are or not?
No, they haven't.
Are any of the state-owned generators not had to increase their supply after that report?
No, so we didn't need to direct generators in the publicly owned sphere to supply. They were already doing that. We do have some generators that are offline for unplanned reasons. So we know that there was an explosion out at Callide. Our Swanbank E generator is off, and they've contributed, along with the severe weather events and that high gas price, to elevated prices. And what we're seeing is intervention in the market by the market operator to cap prices, but some of the instruments that they use to do that are being construed as there being a risk of a lack of supply. It's simply not true.
How many of those generators are down because of maintenance?
I can tell you those numbers. So as of today, there are 4 publicly owned generation units that are not operating and 4 privately owned generation units. But there are over 100 generating units across Queensland. This government has also invested has invested in over 400 megawatts of large-scale battery storage as well. We've seen 50 large-scale renewable energy projects across Queensland, creating over 8,000 jobs. We'll continue to invest in renewable energy and, importantly, in storage. Just last week, the Treasurer announced funding to accelerate pumped hydroelectricity here in Queensland. We want to detach our electricity market from the global price market so that we can ensure that our prices properly reflect the cost of generation. And today's announcement is about accelerating that too.
The Callide C4 has been damaged since the explosion. The
Yes.
Minister as well as under maintenance. Why haven't they been repaired urgently?
So they are being repaired urgently, and so these are massive pieces of equipment that require a large amount of workers to apply their trade on those. And I can assure all Queenslanders that everything is being done. People are working around the clock to get those generation units back online, but they're a small proportion of the total available supply. So to give you an indication, Queenslanders right now are using about 4,500 megawatts, and there's about 9,000 megawatts of supply available. So no risk of a shortfall. There is some market intervention by the operator to keep prices low.
So when will they be repaired?
So I can tell you, Swanbank E is due for coming back online in September. Korea Unit 3, which is one of our hydro, came back on yesterday. Callide Unit B2 will be back on the 1st of July. Callide Unit C3 we expect back on by the end of this week. Callide C4, that's the one that had the incident last year, will be back on in April 2023. There are 4 other generating units that are privately owned that are coming back on over the next couple of months. So we'll see some of the pressure come off the market in coming days.
We have 8 of them down. How many are
Depending on the scale of what you describe as a large-scale generating unit, but 103 would be a safe figure to use. So
How much capacity do those outages represent?
so the outages represent 1,487 megawatts of publicly owned generation and 1,168 megawatts of private generation. And so if we had those available, it would significantly reduce the need to call on those private generators. But I think it's a good opportunity to reflect on just how important it is to maintain public ownership of Queensland's electricity assets. It has been the private generators that have been required to be called on at that higher price, and that's what's driving up those prices, which has led to the market intervention. It has been Queensland's publicly owned companies generating in gas, in coal, in wind and solar and in storage that have been supplying reliable electricity for years and years and continuing to do so at an appropriate price.
There's a lot of failure in the market.
Look, I don't think there is, I wouldn't describe it that way. The energy market is designed to respond to circumstances like this. The Australian Energy Market Operator has those powers to call in that additional supply. That's what they're doing. Some of those market notices that they issue, it's like being a rugby league coach, and you know, you've got a 20 player squad and you've put 10 onto the field and you've realised that you need another 3. No one would criticise that coach for fielding a 13-man team. That's all the energy market operator is doing at the moment.
There's a lot of talk about what the previous federal government got wrong, but what exactly is it that you think they missed over 9 years?
Well, it was 9 years of failed policy and no investment in large-scale storage, no investment in large-scale renewable energy generation. That left this nation held to ransom by global prices. We could have established Australia's energy independence. We have the world's best resources in wind and solar and water, the smartest people making the best technology here, and that was ignored for nearly a decade by the Abbott-Turnbull-Morrison government, and Queenslanders, everyone on the East Coast, is now paying the price.
South Australia put their own battery and there's work on that. Why didn't we go our own way?
Well, since 2015, we've been recovering from 3 years of inaction from the Campbell-Newman government, who decimated renewable energy here in Queensland. They took this state backwards in 3 years by about a decade. And so we've seen significant investment, 50 large-scale projects under the leadership of Annastacia, Palaszczuk, creating about 8,000 jobs, billions of dollars of investment, and the Treasurer committing to more storage, more renewables, and continued public ownership so that Queenslanders can continue to control the electricity system.
No large-scale batteries, though.
We have invested in over 400...
Adelaide.
No, they're not the size of Adelaide, but we're getting there. And the announcement today will put Queensland in the driver's seat in terms of delivering not just Queensland, but the entire nation, the next generation of large-scale battery storage.
Treasurer, can I ask you about the Fair Work?
Yep.
I just want to ask about the Fair Work Commission decision today, the 5.2% pay rise. Do you welcome that decision? And do you think it could have any impact on the bottom line of Queensland businesses?
Well, workers who are the lowest paid workers in the country, the lowest paid workers on the minimum wage, they deserve that support. That's important for them. We know the cost of living on the lowest paid workers is significant. They feel the cost of living increases the most of any workers. We know that cost of living increase is continuing. We've just heard today very significant rate rises from the LNP-controlled Brisbane City Council under Adrian Schrinner's leadership. Rates going up by almost 5% across the city, in some places 7%. So I think it's important that we look after the lowest paid workers. They deserve that sort of increase because they're the ones that are feeling the cost of living pressures the most.
What cost of living relief measures will you deliver in the budget?
Well, we've already announced that, Jack, and I think you know that, the very significant cost of living relief, $175 that's going to come off power bills at the cost of $385 million. The reason we can do that, that's an asset ownership dividend, because we own our we have publicly owned energy assets. It allows us to find that money to give it back to Queenslanders. So that's going to be a very significant increase. Some cost of living measures are beyond the control of the state government. We know the federal government is framing a budget to be handed down in the end of October. So things like fuel prices, those sorts of things are beyond the control of the state. So we know the federal government will be announcing a significant cost of living package. But our job, of course, is to deliver good services, better services for Queenslanders, to create jobs for them, which we've done. We are one of the jobs generating powerhouses of the country, 145,000 jobs created since the start of the pandemic, more jobs than any other state. We're only 20% of the Australian economy in Queensland, yet we've created more jobs than any other state. And New South Wales and Victoria have just come across that line, have just beaten us, about 147,000 jobs. The two biggest states together have just matched Queensland. And of course, protecting our great lifestyle, the enviable lifestyle that we have, that's going to be the focus of our budget, which supports Queenslanders at this time.
Treasurer, just on those dividends that you mentioned, so that they've been declining for the past 3 years, but thanks to the high wholesale prices, they're going to be forecast to be a lot higher than they were in the last budget. What's the plan for those dividends? Will any of that money be used to pay down debt or another power rebate, or is it going to the rebate you already announced?
I'll announce that on Tuesday, Lydia, and so I'll have more to say about those dividends next week.
Do you think they'll go back to
Yes.
Today, apparently 9 hospitals across the state have had an increase in ramping in March. What's the government doing about that?
Well, we know there's pressures on health systems around Australia and around the world, which is why the health system and investing in health will be a focus of our budget next week. But on specific matters about the operation of hospitals and the ambulance system, I'll leave that to the Health Minister.
Just beyond taxes, can you rule out the introduction of any new fees or charges in the budget?
Well, on fees and charges, we know that we've had some of the lowest increases in the country, 2.5%. That was the increase in state fees and charges this year. That's about half of the rate increase in the Brisbane City Council area, and that was followed by fees and charge increases of 1.8% and 1.7%. So that's what we've done in the last 2 years. So we've had very low increases. We've kept that pressure down to that point about what have we done about cost of living. When you see what's happening with rates across Queensland, more than 4% on the Gold Coast, 3.9% on the Fraser Coast, 5% in Brisbane. We've kept the increase of fees and charges to 2.5% in the coming financial year, and that includes things like Rego, registration for Queenslanders. So we're doing our bit to make sure we keep the cost of government lower for Queenslanders when it comes to those fees and charges.
The question was, can you rule out any new fees and charges?
We will announce our full range of measures, revenue, expenses, the whole thing, the whole shebang will be in the budget next week. But I can tell you this, we are keeping to our promise. No new and increased taxes for the people of Queensland. That's the promise we made at the election. We're delivering on that promise. We've honoured that promise, just as we've honoured our promise to the coal companies to keep royalties frozen until the 30th of June. A 10-year freeze that we've delivered.
There doesn't seem to be any rebates available for anyone with their household battery usage to join with solar. Other states do offer that. Are you worried that that could defer people from putting solar batteries in their own homes?
No, I'm not. We have some of the strongest uptake of solar engagement in the country. Solar arrays all across Queensland on homes. Queensland has embraced that sort of technology. We are not just the sunshine state, we're the solar state when it comes to solar energy, and Queenslanders are embracing that. But we always look at that mix over time. We've got the increasing uptake of electric vehicles. All of those things factor into government decision making over time.
On those dividends, sorry, just to clarify, they're not just going to flow into general revenue, you've got a special plan for them?
No, I'll be announcing what happens with government-owned corporation dividends in the budget next week. All right, thanks everyone. We're going to have a look at batteries now.
Let's do that.